Football is the number one sport in America. And this time of year, everybody's happy. Everyone's excited. It's a new season, new year, and everybody's team has that chance to win the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, this time does not last very long. The season starts, teams start losing, and it becomes very apparent which teams just really have no chance at all of making it to the playoffs, the Super Bowl, or even having a winning record. For the fans of those teams, football becomes extremely disappointing. No longer is the excitement there. They know their team can't win. And except for the few die-hard fans, those people stop paying attention to football. That's a horrible, horrible thing. And what's the solution? Fantasy football. Hi, my name is Chris Walker. Today I'm going to talk to you about fantasy football. I'm going to talk to you about how fantasy football allows the fans from even the worst teams to enjoy the whole entire league, to enjoy it throughout the season. And then it also provides you some great social connections in the process. Now, there are two main areas of fantasy football that I would like to talk to you about. And the first is how a fantasy football league is set up in the standard league and what comprises of a team. I talked about the scoring and the different positions on the team. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about is the enjoyable benefits of playing fantasy football. The two main things that I'd like to talk about is the increased interest in the sport, as we said, and then the social aspect that really, really makes it all worth it. So, before we can talk about those benefits, let's talk about standard league and fantasy football, how it's set up, and the composition of the teams. Like I said, there's two main areas I want to talk about with this. The first will be the standard fantasy league setup, and then the second will be what makes up a team and the scoring. So, first off, a standard fantasy football league consists of 10 teams, and they compete for 4 playoff spots throughout the year. The winner is determined by the amount of points their team scores. Their points are based on how each player on their team does in that given week. A standard fantasy football team consists of 16 players. They start with one quarterback that's a starter, 2 wide receivers that's a starters, 2 running backs that are starters, a tight end, a defense and special teams, a kicker, and then one position they call a flex position where you can start either a running back or a wide receiver. And then you also have 7 bench slots. Now you use those slots to pick up people to replace your people in case of injury or if they have a bye week or anything like that, so that you are ready to win each week and put yourself in the best position. The point scoring in Standard Fantasy League is pretty basic. It's 6 points for a touchdown if you're anybody but a quarterback. And for a quarterback, it's 4 points. And then it's 10 points, or 1 point for every 10 yards you get on the ground or through the air for wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. And then 1 point for every 25 yards if you're the quarterback. Quarterbacks seem to get more stats. It's easier for them to get stats. So in order to not make it too skewed, you have to make it harder for them to get the points. So now that we have a better understanding of how a standard fantasy football league is set up, let's talk about the benefits of playing fantasy football. Now, there are many enjoyable benefits. The best part of fantasy football is definitely the social aspect. Before we talk about that, I want to talk about how fantasy football, it provides an interest throughout the year. No matter what your real football team's doing, you care about all these players on your team that are all spread out through the NFL. So you're watching games, you're interested, and you really care, even if your team is really not doing that good. In fantasy, even if your team in fantasy is not doing good, every week brings a new opportunity, and you can really turn everything around really quick in fantasy. So it provides a lot more interest in the game of football, which is great because everybody loves football. The other great benefit is the social aspect, and I think this is the most important area because it's all about the competition. It's all about getting together with friends and talking. Some great ideas are to grill on Sundays, have everybody over, grill some food, everybody eats, watches the games, and keeps track of all their points, and then you get your little competitive talking, and you have fun, and you just do your best to beat them all. And you enjoy it while you're at it. And always remember that it is a game, and you're there to enjoy it, so don't get overly competitive. Another great tip is for the draft day. When you're drafting your teams, get everybody together. Do that in person. Don't do it on the computer or anything like that, because you're missing such a big element of the social area. That really makes it. It's a lot of fun. Have some beers, have some barbecue, and just really enjoy yourselves. Now that you understand the basics of fantasy football and the benefits of playing the game of fantasy football, I'd like to recap what we've talked about. So today I've talked about the great game of fantasy football. We went over the two main areas of fantasy football. First, we talked about the setup of the standard league in fantasy football, how each team is comprised of 16 players. We also talked about the point systems in the standard league and what you have to do in order to win, and how many points, touchdowns, and yards were worth. We also then talked about how fantasy football is a great way to make football more interesting for everybody. And that really helps the game of football and makes fantasy football that much more exciting. And then we talked about the social aspect of fantasy football and how getting together and grilling and being competitive really makes it all worth it, and it really brings everything together. And it's a great game, and it's great to have that camaraderie. So I thank you all for your time today. I hope I've given you a little inspiration to maybe try out the game of fantasy football if you haven't. I appreciate the time. Thank you. Have a good day.